Good afternoon, everyone. Allison Scoberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are also here today with Justin Moen from Blue Sprig. Justin was having some technical difficulties with his camera, so I think he'll be back with us soon. So sorry about that. I am glad that all of you are here with us today. We are in webinar mode, which means that we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there, and we are glad that you're here. Our chat box is open today, and the chat box is where you will put your questions, any questions that you have. As we are going through the presentation today, I've just added my contact information to the chat box as well. So, Consolidated Planning Group, we always start off with a little introduction about who we are and what we do. Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic special needs financial planning firm. We are nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We are domiciled in Texas, but we serve clients all throughout the United States. Sometimes people listen to some of our meetings on podcast, on Spotify, things like that. Sometimes they join our webinars. Whichever way you're hearing this today, just know that you're always welcome to reach out to us directly at contact@cpgcares.net. If you're listening by podcast, and we'll be happy to send you a copy of the slides. A lot of times our slides have important links and important information, and we are always happy to share those slides so you have those links so you can just focus on listening and not having to take notes on everything that you see, or trying to speed and take notes before we change the slides. So contact@cpgcares.net. You can get a copy of the slides. Everyone who is registered for today's webinar is going to get an email following today's presentation. It's going to have a link to the recording as well as a copy of the slides. So all of our slides, all of our presentations live on the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel after the fact. We have over 400 webinars on topics related to planning for a loved one with a disability. If you can think about it, it's probably out there. There are over 400 webinars out there, every topic that you can imagine, from guardianship, special needs trust, SSI, and Medicaid waivers. They're all out there, and we've tried to label them in such a manner so you can find the topic that's most relevant to the step that you're on when it comes to planning for your loved one. So today, we're going to be taking a deeper dive on transition and steps that need to be taken, critical steps that need to be taken as it relates to transitioning with your loved one that has a disability. I always like to make clear a little bit more about what we do versus what a special needs attorney does, because there seems to be a lot of confusion in our community about that. So when it comes to planning for special needs, it's really a team that you work with. There's a lot of people and a lot of people seats at the table when it comes to the team. So you have, the educational team. This might be teachers and educators, people of the on the team for the ARD meetings or IEP and planning process. We have physicians that are on the team as far as transition of medical care and things like that. And there may be additional, like, counselors, psychologists, or psychiatrists that might be on the team. But then when it comes to planning financially and legally for a loved one with a disability, you will need a special needs financial advisor, as well as a special needs or an estate planning attorney. So an estate planning attorney is they're going to be the person that you need. I always say that we're the money and they're the paper. You truly need to work with a specialized estate planning attorney that is specifically nuanced on individuals with a disability. They're going to help you with such things as guardianship, alternatives to guardianship, such as supported decision-making agreements or partial guardianship, things like that. They're also going to help you with your legal documents, such as a special needs trust, wills, powers of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, things like that. So they're the legal documents. We don't do what they do. So sometimes people call us and say, I need guardianship. And they don't do what we do, and we don't do what they do. So we're the money. People call us, they want to know, how much do I need to fund a special needs trust? How can I make sure that I can retire and stay retired for 25 to 35 years, but still have enough money to fund a special needs trust for my loved one. People call us because of our certification as nationally certified as Social Security advisors. They want to know how and when to pull the trigger on various state and federally funded programs, and how do we maintain eligibility for such programs. We help people put protection plans in place, lifetime care plans. We do a lot of transition planning. We help set up ABLE accounts, and we do a lot of advocacy by way of our webinars and our podcast. And I always like to mention, I'm a mom to four. I have two adult kids with disabilities that have transitioned into adulthood. And I eat, sleep, and breathe this, both personally and professionally. And a lot of our YouTube channel and the webinars and the podcasts that we do were truly born out of my own frustration of even as much as I know and what I do, this is hard. This stuff is hard. So if you ever felt overwhelmed when you're trying to make sure that you've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed and that you're not messing anything up, you are absolutely not alone. So that was just born out of my own frustration with the idea of I want to equip families and empower people to feel like, hey, I do know what I need to do. I'm going to have a plan and I'm going to work my plan, as opposed to, hey, this is hard and this is frustrating. I've gotten terrible letters from the Social Security Administration or Health and Human Services, or my kid's Medicaid was erroneously canceled, things like that, these big issues that come up along the way. So we've got help out there for you. So just don't feel like you're alone in that process. When it comes to planners in the United States, there's over 263,000 financial planners in the United States. And that is a big number. So that basically tells us no matter where you are in the United States, you can find a financial planner. However, fewer than 0.1% of financial planners in the United States have a focus on special needs or individuals with a disability. And why this is important, I always just liken this to, it's really important to work with a specialist. If you have a heart condition, you're going to go see a cardiologist. If you have a foot condition, you're going to go see a podiatrist. When it comes to planning for a loved one with a disability, because there are so many rules and so many nuances related to state and federally funded programs and maintaining eligibility for such programs, it's really, really important to work with a specialist that understands the ins and outs of these and how to maintain eligibility for these programs, because these programs can be vital to the future success and be a contributing component to the overall financial well-being of your loved one in the future. So that is very, very important. So let's talk about transitions today. So when we're talking about transition, I mentioned healthcare providers and transition, and I would say that is stressful too, and it may have not even come to you yet because you might not have been kicked out of the of the primary care physician just yet, right? Okay, so part of the thing that should be on your radar if we're thinking about transitioning, and when we're thinking about transitioning, that could be a lot of things. It could be for someone whose child is turning 18 or they've recently turned 18. It could be for someone who's turning 21. Maybe they're leaving the public school at 21 or 22. Maybe we're transitioning into a future living situation. It can mean a lot of things for a lot of people. So we're going to talk about those things. But the transition of medical care, we're not really spending a lot of time on today. But what I would tell you how I felt was that we lived in the cocoon of pediatrics for years, for 18 years. It could be 18 to 21. Some places won't kick you out until 21. Sometimes they're kicking you out at age 18. But you live in this cocoon of pediatrics, and pediatrics, it's multidisciplinary, and the specialties talk to one another, and it feels pretty, I don't know, it's a cocoon. And things change as as our kids become adults and they're no longer able to be a part of such clinics. So some of the things that I want to I want to bring up for my Houston folks that are in Houston. Baylor College of Medicine has a transition program, which is pretty nice, and it's a pretty big cocoon if you can qualify for it. So some of the requirements are disabilities, but one of the disabilities has to be an intellectual disability of an IQ below 70. So you can get a referral from your primary care physician, and ask your primary care physicians wherever you are in the state or outside of the state, asking them for transition recommendations for specifically an individual who has a disability or multiple disabilities is going to be important. And this is one for me that, like you've probably, if you're like us, you've probably seen a lot of specialties through the years. You very rarely go to the PCP, maybe for the annual checkup or shots, or maybe they got strep throat or something, but you're always seeing a specialist. Maybe it's a neurologist, maybe it's a cardiologist, whoever it might be. Those specialty clinics, if they will not continue your service with them, they should be able to be well versed and directing you. But don't wait until you get that letter and it says that next month they are no longer your doctor, because then you start scrambling on that as well. Okay, so when we're thinking about transition, the first thing that I talk about is setting realistic expectations. And I think about the Facebook generation or Instagram or any of the other social platforms, where as parents we're seeing all of the great things that everybody else and our friends and their kids are doing, and graduations and cum laude and all these other great things. And maybe you're there, but a lot of the families that we work with aren't there, and it's a little discouraging. Maybe our kids are a little bit behind. They might be behind from an education perspective. A lot of our kids with disabilities are behind from a maturity perspective. And so this is why, setting realistic expectations, and I'm a fan of meeting our kids where they are. It's not a race. This life is not a race, and it starts early. Like, I mean, if you get married, you're literally at your wedding reception, and people are asking you when you're going to have kids. If you have a child, somebody's literally at the hospital asking you when you want another one, and you just had one hours earlier. It's kind of never ending of the next, but they are where they are. They're not necessarily behind. They are where they are, and they have a lifetime to be where they are going. But we are in this constant, whether it's daycare or elementary school, junior high, high school, it's this constant barrage of comparisons of other people. So I always say, give yourself permission to stop doing that. Try to stop doing that. And if it's negative, some of the things that you see or that you feel when you see everybody else's kids are doing fantastic. Well, first of all, they're not all doing fantastic. They only post the fantastic things on these social media platforms. But just bear in mind where they are. So there's no benefit in saying, okay, and like pushing the envelope and saying, no, my kid is going to be in XYZ class, or they are going to do this. They're going to school at 18. They're going to go to higher education, and they're going to make it, because we want to meet them where they are, and we want to put them in an environment where they can have some taste of success. So maybe it's a non-traditional path. Maybe they go to the community college and they take one class, and that class is Introduction to University Studies, which teaches them how to succeed on a higher education level. Maybe they go to work. Maybe we're going to delay a driver's license. Some of our kids will never drive. Some of them absolutely will, but maybe it's going to be delayed. I always say, we are often late to the party, but we get there, and we come big when we get there. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're late to the party, or you're often late to the party, it's okay. You still get there. But if you get there and your loved one has a sense of accomplishment, and they feel good about themselves, and they've had some successes and some wins that they can feel great about, then I think that's part of it. Getting to the party early when they're not ready, and then they have those failures that are kind of sometimes debilitating, is not helpful. So we think of trade school, community college. There is something called vocational rehab. On the screen here, I have TWC, Texas Workforce Commission. Vocational rehab is available in every single state in the US. It's state and federally funded. Vocational rehab is a program. They have deep pockets. It is designed for an individual who has a disability that basically, as a result of that disability, they have impediments to employment, which would make employment challenging. Like maybe they have some social skill issues. It could be any number of things. But the vocational rehab program is a great program. It doesn't cost you anything to be in that program. And the whole point of the program is to help close the gaps for that individual with a disability, those gaps to employment. And they'll put a very specific work employment goal path that is tailored specifically to said individual. So that's cool. Another place is registered apprenticeships. You can find these on the Department of Labor. There are registered apprenticeships out there that will be training your loved one and and they'll be working and they'll be earning some money along the way. I have had clients whose kids were very, very successful at Dow Chemical in some of their registered apprenticeship programs. I've had some others that have been very successful at some hospital apprenticeships. These are things that are out there, and people's kids that went through this apprenticeship and then actually were hired on full time for these jobs. So thinking about a reduced college course load, living at home versus campus, and again, meeting them where they are. There's no comparisons. The self-esteem is critical. And then the only thing I wanted to mention here is on the driver's license. I know that this is a hot topic for a lot of people, and a lot of our kids want to drive, and a lot of parents are really petrified with the idea of the child driving, and maybe they have frontal lobe issues, maybe they have, ADHD or autism or other things, working memory issues or processing speed delays or things like that that make you concerned about them being behind the wheel. And what I just want to mention to you is that there's testing that you can get done at the local hospitals, any hospital or therapy place that works with people that have strokes. They have like a computer simulator type thing that you can go in and you can have done for your child, saying, I want to know if my child can be safe behind the wheel. And it'll basically say yay or nay. And it might say maybe, maybe not yet, but maybe in a few more years. So that is something that you could do. It's typically covered by your health insurance, and any local therapy place like PT, OT, places like that work with stroke victims usually have that. So that's something that you could do to begin with to see, is it safe? Is it not safe? And then the other thing that you can do is research disability driving schools. There are disability driving schools across Texas, across the United States, where they do behind the wheel training for your loved one with the deficits in mind, that maybe the testing that came up. They'll do assessments as well to find out what the deficits might be, and they help close the gap on that. So, transportation is a real issue when it comes to transitioning for our loved ones. How do we get them to higher education? How do we get them to and from transition programs? How do we get them to and from volunteering opportunities or work? Transportation is a real issue. So if it is possible that they could drive in the future, just know that there are specific training programs for that can help you along the way. So I think the key to all of this when it comes to transitioning is thinking early. I know when they start high school, you think, oh my gosh, I have all this time. I have 4 years, and it seems like I just blinked and it was over. Like those 4 years were over. So planning early. And if you're here and you're saying, okay, well, I didn't plan early, but I'm here now. It's not about looking back or beating yourself up. You're here now and we're happy you're here. But having a plan and working your plan. And the reason I'm saying this is for a couple of things. Number one, it is our goal and suggestion that your child doesn't come home from the public school and do nothing. So they graduate high school and they just stay home. They've got nothing. They have no extracurricular activities. They're not enrolled in higher education. They're not working. They're not working with TWC. They're playing video games or doing whatever they do. I'm staying up all night, sleep all day, whatever happens, right? So we want to avoid that. We want our family members to have community. We want them to have friends. We want them to have a purpose. And whether your child will ever go to college or some variation, a work setting or whatever it might be, all of those things are okay. Some of our kids, first of all, one thing that I want to mention is the percentage, and I don't know the exact percentage, but the percentage of neurotypical kids that are actually ready to go to college at age 18 is very small. So again, don't beat yourself up if you have a child that is neurodiverse and may not be ready for college at 18. Maybe they're ready at 28 or 24 or 25. Maybe they need to mature a little bit more to get to where they're going to be. Maybe they need to work or gain some skills, gain some maturity, gain some life skills, those types of things. And just because if the answer is no, not now, it doesn't mean no, not ever. And then the other thing is there are a lot of programs out there that teach a specific skill. I'm thinking like HVAC. There's so many out there, but where they could actually, maybe school isn't their forte, but maybe they could go for 9 months or 12 months or 18 months and get a certificate. Maybe they get a certificate in horticulture or food service or the hospitality industry. Those are all things that we've seen in the past, and all of them are okay. So one of the things that I want to talk about is accommodations. Accommodations that I'm speaking of, I'm speaking for higher education, and I'm speaking regarding like the community college or the university accommodations. So the first things first, before I kind of take that to the next level, I want to talk about the SAT and the ACT. More specifically. So the SAT is through the College Board and the ACT is through the ACT website. It's a different organization, and these are tests that are typically administered in high school. You might have done a PSAT in junior high, you may have heard of this. And these are tests that are often needed to enter the university. They are not needed to enter the community college. So if you are going, if you know for sure that your child is going to go in through the community college, as opposed to straight into the university, it is going to be okay for them not to do the SAT or the ACT. Okay. If they are doing the SAT or the ACT, and going into the university, it will be needed, and every school has different requirements. Some require both the SAT and ACT, maybe it's one or the other. Some will take the highest score from each time that you took it. So like if there was reading, math, and writing, then you can take the highest score from different subtests, but each school is different. So this is one thing as a parent, when we were looking at higher education, that I found frustrating, is that all of the rules are different for every school, every community college, every school, the rules are different, but they are all posted on their website. So getting accommodations for the SAT and the ACT, there is such things as extra time. You could have it in a non-distracted area. You could test over multiple days. Those are some examples. You could have a reader, like if a person doesn't read, there's some different things, different accommodations that you can get. You're going to go to their website, you're going to go to accommodations, you're going to search accommodations, and it's going to take you to the disability page where you can download the application, and it'll tell you what you need to do. It does need to be signed off by a doctor. The other thing that you can do, so this is if you're doing it yourself, maybe you homeschool, maybe you just want to submit this, you can also work with a guidance counselor at your local school. They should be adept in understanding how to request accommodations for these tests, but request them. So if your child has accommodations in the school, those accommodations don't automatically apply to the SAT or ACT because they're a different entity. So you do have to apply for those. So make sure you apply for those early. If you are entering into the community college in Texas, there is something called the TSI, the Texas Success Initiative. That is an exam, the TSI exam, and that is necessary for entrance into the community college. Okay, so that TSI, there are all kinds of free practice. Most community colleges can send you a link to free practice for the TSI. They're going to test reading, writing, and math on that TSI, and they are determining whether or not the student is ready for 4 credit classes. So if they fail the TSI, you can fail You can pass 3 sections, you could fail 3 sections, you could pass 1 section and fail 2. So you could pass writing and fail math and reading, right? So if you pass writing, that's going to mean that you could take 4 credit writing classes on the community college or higher education platform. Okay, so if you fail the TSI in any one of those sections, you can practice some more and you can take it again. There are other things that you can do as well. So if you fail the TSI, say in math, there are remedial courses that you could take for no credit, but to bring a person up to par. So also for the TSI, I would like to mention that there are free TSI practice exams, but there is also a paid for TSI practice, and we did both, and I liked the paid for TSI a little bit better than the free ones. I felt like it was more thorough and it helped my student pass the TSI. So you want to check what requirements are and be prepared. So when we're requesting accommodations on the higher education, all schools, community colleges, as well as universities have an Office of Disability. They may call it ODS, they may call it Office of Disability, Disability Services. It could be called any number of things, but they do have a website, and they also they do have how you request accommodations on the higher education level as well. And so basically, what that means is you're gonna need to request accommodations on the higher education level. Just because you are getting accommodations on the high school level does not mean that those accommodations flow through to college. In fact, they absolutely don't flow through. They will look at the accommodations that you received. They will look at what the recommendation is. They're going to look at the application, and they're going to want to see updated testing. This might be neuropsych testing, learning disability testing, those types of testings. And usually they want that testing to be within the last 3 to 5 years. So that's something, if you're planning, you need to know that. If you're working with vocational rehab, oftentimes when they start the case in vocational rehab, oftentimes there's testing involved. They'll do a vocational evaluation, often a neuropsych evaluation. So that's one thing that you want to make sure that you have updated, so that way your child can start the higher education with the accommodations that they need. Some of the accommodations that we had that caused one of my kids to be very successful in higher education, we had voice to text recognition software for people that have fine motor skills or typing skills or writing skills. We had audio books. That was another thing. That's a big deal for any people that have vision issues. Also, people that have processing speed delays, where, some people have processing speed delays, and, you have these big passages in college to read, and it's too much. It's too much. So sometimes the audio books is something that is helpful. Testing in a testing center. They don't really do reduced assignments. I know in high school you could get reduced assignments. Maybe they're going to do the odds or the evens or something like that. They don't really do reduced assignments, but we were able to get, I think we were able to get 100% more time on taking exams and other things like that that were timed, and that was very, very helpful. So when it comes to looking at schools, we have an entire presentation on higher education for kids with disabilities, and I actually think you can check this out, but we have one this month that is, I think we have like eight or 10 schools that are going to participate, and they're programs specifically designed for individuals with a disability. And basically in the course of an hour, they're going to tell us who they are, who they serve, where they're located, how their program works, and kind of the details. So if you're looking for specifics like that, we're going to do that again. We've done it in the past, and that lives on our YouTube channel, but we've got one coming up. So the last thing I want to tell you on the testing is that 3 to 5 years, again, you're going to want to check with the specific school, because each school requires something differently. They got a little bit more relaxed on this after COVID or during COVID, because nobody could get any testing and they couldn't get the results. So they've relaxed some guidelines. And another thing that I have found is don't be afraid to ask. So let's say that you have testing that's 6 or 7 years old. but maybe your child has a diagnosis that is static and it doesn't change, and the accommodations that he needed when he was 7 are the same accommodations that he needs when he's 17. And you've been going to the same doctor for years, so you could get your doctor to write a letter and say, please accept this outdated testing. We have not found it necessary for them to be retested. The condition is a static condition, a static diagnosis. Nothing has changed. The accommodations needed remain the same. I've been following this kid for this many years. I have definitely seen higher education institutions take that old testing along with that letter. And I just say that because the testing is expensive. If the workforce VR program is paying for it, great, but you can totally expect to pay $1,500 to $3,500 for some of this testing. So it's, as I say, it's not nothing. You need to plan for that financially, and just, maybe if there's a workaround, that would be great. A FERPA is going to be needed to release information. So from one parent to another, parents find this very annoying, that you are completely allowed to pay the tuition and pay for everything and do everything, but when it comes to releasing information to you, including grades of your child, they will release exactly nothing to you, but they don't have any problem at all releasing the bill to you. People find that very, very frustrating. It's the federal law, so don't be frustrated by it. Your antics of, communicating that to the school is going to fall on deaf ears because it is a federal law. So just know that there's a FERPA. The FERPA usually lives on their website. You can download it. It's signed by the student authorizing you to call on their behalf. Most schools are promoting independence. They want to work with the student. They don't want to work with the student's mama. And so I know we've got a lot of parents that have been there, have been very instrumental in their kids' success and continue to be. And maybe it's on the sidelines, and maybe it's the freshman year or the beginning. But just know that they're trying to phase you out as it relates to being the communicator for your student, and trying to encourage the student to gain the skills that they need to use their words, talk about what their needs are, and work with the Office of Disability. The other thing that I like to mention is you should consider a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney for your college student and any aging family members. So this is good for an individual with a disability who is not under guardianship or partial guardianship. This is good for your students that do not have a disability. I am a fan. Healthcare power of attorney, power of attorney. So if something happens to your child becomes incapacitated, they have a mental health crisis, they're hauled out to a mental hospital, any of those types of things, it gives you authorization as a parent to handle their finances. It gives you as an authorization to handle medical decisions for them if they are unable to do so. Okay, so this is going to be really, really important. And again, I mentioned aging family members here. Don't wait for the stroke or the heart attack or the medical crisis to learn that your mom and dad or other people in your life that are important to you don't have these documents in place. It's real easy to do. I'm a fan of working with an attorney, but when it comes to a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney, you literally can download these online, and that would be better off. Download them online, get them signed, get them notarized, than not having anything at all in place. Justin, I'm glad you're back with us. I know you had some computer difficulty. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about on this slide is reasonable accommodation is required if it does not pose undue hardship. You can learn more about this at askjan.org, the Job Accommodation Network, and you can also learn about this on the Department of Labor. It is also true that a reasonable accommodation is required if it does not pose undue hardship when it comes to housing. So if there are accommodations for dorms, maybe your student needs a private room because of whatever disabilities they have. Maybe they need a walk-in shower, or maybe they need a handicap accessible room or things like that. Maybe they need a refrigerator in their dorm, and their dorm doesn't normally have one because they have medications that need to be refrigerated. Those are examples of reasonable accommodations that can be requested on the higher education level. So some of the things that I have on here, this is certainly not all inclusive. This is some educational options post high school. that we know about, that we've heard about. Most of them are in Texas for this particular presentation. Lynn University, the Metamorphosis program, is actually in Florida. Non-Pareil Institute is not a college, but it is a kind of a learning platform for digital careers and other things like that. Non-Pareil is a pretty cool place. So, we've got Austin Community College STEPS program. And then there's another college, Austin College. It's not here on this list, but Austin College is in Sherman, Texas. They are really known for doing a great job of working with individuals with a disability. Some of the schools that are on here because A, they have a great Office of Disability, or B, they have an awesome program that we've heard about. We've had clients have kids there and they've had some good success. When I think about how to, kind of sift out your options, think about what your kid wants to do. What is their career path, or what is it that they want to do? Narrow it down to the schools that have those particular programs. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is start investigating the offices of disability.
I mean, I went to Wharton County Junior College is where I went to for my certifications, basically.
Yes, that's a good program. There's a lot of them. And when I say, like, thinking about the offices of disability, they're all created differently. Some offices of disability are very, very big and they're very well staffed, and they have resources. They have various software programs that actually will help your student. There are other things that they have, and some offices of disability are a one-person shop, and they might be small, but they might be mighty. But I saw some that were small and not mighty.
I
Like
mean, also, you also get a factor in, I guess, for some people who, when it comes to pay for some of these schools. I know that too is another thing, because I know some people have money, some don't, for to be able to pay for the courses, I guess, too.
Yes, and that's true with the FAFSA. We have a whole presentation on, how do we pay for this and stuff. But if it's in line with their, get to work program, their employment, I think they call it an IPE, individual employment plan, I believe it's what it's called through VR. If it's in line with that individual employment plan, it is very possible that vocational rehab will pay for higher education. We have a lot of families that have had that opportunity through VR, so that is true. And then there are other programs as well. So just, paying attention, to, when do these applications open up? When do they close? How many openings do they have? Are they online? Are they in person? Just knowing, I think the biggest thing that I want you to feel is encouraged, that even if your loved one has an intellectual disability, there are still programs out there for them and for their success. And maybe they go to a transition program first before they go to one of these programs, but research early. I suggest, and I'm sorry in advance for suggesting this, but I suggest creating a spreadsheet, because, like I said, none of the stuff is the same. None of the schools, none of their deadlines are the same. None of their rules for accommodation is the same. The applications for the accommodations is not the same. So if you're applying to multiple schools, it'll be helpful to keep a spreadsheet and keep critical
And of course,
dates.
there's also trade schools as too.
Correct. So yes, we were talking about that a little bit earlier, like the community college or trade schools, or maybe you're going to go learn, like get a license for something or get a certification. Those are all things as well. So the other thing I like to mention, and this is also sometimes covered by vocational rehab, is Campus Connection. This program is through Bloom Consulting. If you don't know who Bloom Consulting is, I suggest you check out their website. They're pretty cool. They have a lot of services that they provide, but this is basically a wraparound program and a Berkman method assessment to build an individualized support team for your student. They have a connection coach who provides mentoring and guidance and navigational support. And the whole point of this is to empower the student to problem solve their concerns more effectively on a higher education level. It's kind of taken mom out of it, a lot of times as we're moving through those teenage years with our kids, they think that we're not as smart as they used to think we were. And they don't want to work with us as much. They don't want your opinion as much as they used to care about it. So working with somebody else that is helping them navigate their world in higher education is awesome. So again, this could be paid for by VR. It's about $1,000 a month, but there's the Campus Connection program. I don't have a slide for this, but there is also the TRIO program, TRIO or TRIOS program. Most colleges have a TRIO program for at-risk students, first generation college students. There's a lot of reasons a student may qualify for TRIO, but TRIO is free and it's like a federal program. There's federal grants for that. And if your student is picked for this TRIO program at college, they'll have free tutoring. Sometimes they have like a book library where they may not have to pay for some of the books. It's a really good program. The TRIO program is a good program. So put that on your list. Do they have a TRIO program? When does that application open up? What do you have to do to get approved for that? And maybe you don't hit the criteria. Maybe your kid isn't a first generation college student, but maybe they're at risk for other reasons. A letter, stating, look, I know I might not meet the traditional requirements for TRIO, but if I could be, included regardless for the following reasons, I'm a fan of that as well. Justin, I can't see you right now, but what did you say?
Yeah, basically, yeah. So yeah, because some of those are good programs wise on the basically. I know I jumped on to back then days, basically for even agencies like Texana, you could have job coaches and everything else to help out with finding work.
Yes, that's so true. The Texas Workforce Commission, VR, we talked about, but there's also Workforce Solutions, and you may have heard of Summer Earn and Learn or pre-employment training services. Lots of good programs there. And Justin, if you don't mind, Justin is a success story, and I like to mention that. Justin works for Blue Sprig. Justin is a success story, went through school. He's on the autism spectrum himself and works full time for Blue Sprig. Very
It's part
smart.
time, but yeah, because
Part time
one of the
for Blue Sprig.
presentations that you talked about before with the disability benefits and everything and SSI.
Right, yes. So we've partnered with you in the past, so we're happy to be back with you again. So when we think about getting started with special needs planning, part of planning and transitioning is planning for the future of your loved one. What about when you're no longer here or you can no longer care for your loved one? And what if it's not when you're no longer here or can no longer care for your loved one? What if it's your vision of your future and your retirement has some semblance of what you want for your life? You don't, your vision of being a full-time caregiver for the rest of your life until you die is not exactly what you had in mind for retirement. That's okay. Your loved one needs some autonomy from you anyway. It's healthy. It's healthy for them to have friends and to have community and to build relationships. Maybe they're involved, with Special Olympics. Maybe they're involved in various volunteer organizations. I know that I have some clients that have kids that have volunteered very rewardingly with an animal shelter. And it has been really, really good. They've done it for several years, but whatever that looks like. But what we want to look at is the future and making sure that we have a plan and work our plan. And so what we think about is how do we plan for the worst and hope for the best? So I'm not a negative Nelly, Debbie Downer, but what I think is let's plan for the worst and hope for the best. So when the best happens, what that means is maybe you can retire early. Maybe you can buy that vacation home or take a few more trips that you would hope to in retirement. But when we don't plan for the worst and hope for the best, and then the best we fall short on, then we're looking at things like now I got to work a few more years, or now I need to work the rest of my life, or I don't know how I'm going to fund the special needs trust. Those are things that can happen. So whether we meet with a lot of people, and we meet with people that have done a lot of planning. They come to us, they have a financial advisor, they have met with an attorney, they have a special needs trust, they have guardianship, they're pretty well educated. We've met with people that have started the planning process and they need to pick up where they left off. And then we've met with people before that they say, oh my gosh, I would be embarrassed for you to understand what we've done so far because it is so little. And so what I always say, no matter where you are in the planning process, again, don't beat yourself up. It's not about looking back, it's about looking forward. So understanding the difference between a planner and attorney, we talked about that in the early part of this presentation. Working with experts, building that team of experts to help you plan for the future. Again, maybe it's that job coach, maybe it's your vocational rehab counselor, maybe it's the IEP team, maybe it's the Office of Disability from a higher education institution. We want you to gather your planning documents to help determine your starting point. So what are planning documents? This is everything that you've got in place so far. Any legal documents that you already have. This is your statements: Social Security statement, full earnings records, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, group insurance through work, any coverage that you may have outside of work, life insurance, disability, long-term care, annuities, those types of things. All of the stuff that you have in place to help you plan for your own future and your own retirement and for the future of your loved one. We suggest creating a letter of intent. We have an entire webinar on a letter of intent on how to create this. This is basically what I call a family love letter. If something happened to you, you know more about your loved one with the disability than anyone will ever know. So if something happens to you, you become incapacitated or you pass away, you want to make sure that the future caregiver of your loved one would have this information. It's going to have information on there like who are their doctors, what are their diagnosis, what meds do they take, what makes them thrive, what makes them fall apart, any of the benefits that they might be getting, SSI, Medicaid, Medicare, any of those types of benefits. It's going to have all of that information in there. So this is a working document that a future caregiver could step into your shoes in the event that they need, some guidance on that. So the letter of intent, also, if you email us, we'll be happy to send you, we have a template for a letter of intent. And I always say, take your time completing it. It is 20 pages long. It's not nothing. Okay. So you don't have to sit down and do it in one setting. It is a form fillable document. And there's some emotions that go into this of when you're putting this stuff down, of like the history of where we've been and where we're going and what we're doing and some of these other things. So just take some time to do it. We suggest that you revisit your letter of intent annually, and at least annually, maybe twice a year if your situation is pretty fluid, to revisit that a little bit more often. And someone asked if this is being recorded and if you'll get a copy of the slides. Everybody is going to get a copy of the slides. This is being recorded. You'll get an email with a link to the recording as well as a copy of the slides. And again, if you're listening by podcast and you want a copy of these slides, we're happy to share them. You can email us at contact@cpgcares.net, contact@cpgcares.net, and we'll send you a copy of the slides. So the last thing is consider your vision. Think about your vision of the future for your family and your loved one, for yourself. I don't have to tell parents to think about the future of their loved one because that's all they ever think about. What I do have to tell people is I need you to stop and think about the future yourself, you, your spouse, your semblance of retirement, what you hoped that would look like. If you have a kid that is going to live with you for the rest of your life looks very different than somebody who sends their kid off to college at 18 and they get married and sail off into the sunset. It's a very different situation. And there needs to be balance in that for you, for your life, for what you want. You've worked your whole life. You've been a caregiver your whole life, whatever that situation may find you in. There has to be balance. And when you don't have balance, your own health fails and your caregiving ability will diminish the time frame that you'll be able to provide those caregiving services that you once did. So it is very, very important. So thinking about planning for the future, developing a future care plan now will answer these questions. We can definitely help you with this. We help people identify how much do they need to fund a special needs trust? How do I maximize Social Security benefits for my whole family? We have the only software out there that takes into consideration a disabled adult child under a parent's record, and it tells us exactly when and how you and your spouse, if you're married, should pull the trigger on your own Social Security to maximize benefits for the two of you, as well as your loved one with a disability. And then we help answer questions like, what happens to my child when I'm gone? We've got families that want their kid to live with them for as long as they possibly can. We have families that want their kid to transition into some other living arrangement. Maybe it's age 22, age 18, age 25. None of that is wrong. But what are those places? Where are those facilities? What does that look like? Preserving eligibility for state and federally funded programs is so critically important. I'm talking about SSI and Medicaid. Our kids are eligible for childhood disability benefits under a parent's record if their disability started prior to age 22. We have entire presentations on our Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel regarding SSI and Medicaid. It's a 10,000 pound gorilla. It's a whole presentation in itself. We have many presentations on that. We even have presentations of what if my kid's getting SSI and they work too, how does that all work? So check those out. But so SSI and Medicaid is one thing, Social Security, disability, and Medicare is another thing. Having money in a special needs trust is an account that we can have money outside of the $2,000 limit for Medicaid that will preserve eligibility and pay for future care for our loved ones. Life insurance is often used to fund a special needs trust. We pay for our kids' needs out of our current assets while we're alive, but when we pass away, the proceeds of our life insurance going to a special needs trust to fund the future care of our loved ones. So if you've ever wondered as a parent, oh my gosh, how in the world am I ever going to fund millions of dollars into a special needs trust? There's no way. I don't even know how I'm going to fund my retirement. That's things that people have said to me before. Oftentimes, we're going to use life insurance to fund a special needs trust, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually smart planning. Life insurance passes tax-free to heirs as well. An ABLE account, a 529A, again, we have entire presentations on ABLE accounts. An ABLE account is under the tax code 529A, is for an individual with a disability whose disability began prior to age 26. And they can put up to $18,000 a year, an additional $14,580 if the individual with a disability is working up to that amount, up to that earnings amount. So if they earn $5,000, they could only put an additional $5,000 above the $18,000. But if they earned $14,580, they could put the $18,000 plus $14,580. The disability had to begin prior to age 26, but the law has changed on that. And starting in 2026, the disability had to start prior to age 46. So we help people with all of these things. And again, we have presentations on every single one of these topics, and we can go deeper with you. So the ABLE account, the beneficiary is the account owner. Income earned is not tax deductible, and the money in the ABLE account does not jeopardize SSI or Medicaid. So the other ABLE presentation will again go over the contribution limits and that kind of thing. So when do I need a special needs trust and guardianship? A special needs trust will preserve benefit eligibility such as SSI and Medicaid while providing resources for the benefit of your special needs loved one. The guardianship process, you don't need guardianship prior to your child turning 18 because you are their guardian prior to them turning age 18. But once they turn 18, it will depend on if you need guardianship. So the guardianship process can begin 6 months prior to the child turning 18. You can start working with an attorney 6 to 8 months prior to the child turning 18. These attorneys, a lot of families feel overwhelmed with this because they don't know what the child needs. I have some families that definitively know that the child needs guardianship. Other families are reluctant to take away the rights of the child. They don't want to. A full guardianship takes away the right to vote. It takes the right to drive away. And so some families don't want to take those rights away. There is a such thing as partial guardianship. So there's full guardianship. There is partial guardianship. There is a supported decision-making agreement in Texas. Many states have a supported decision-making agreement. You can Google and see if your state does. Texas definitely does. And then there is a such thing as a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. And the law for Texas and most states is the least restrictive, most appropriate. But you do not have to walk into the attorney's office knowing what you want. Their job is to talk to you further about your loved one, to talk to your loved one, to have a better understanding of what those diagnoses are, what those deficits are. Do they have an intellectual disability with an IQ below 70? And their job is to help guide you through the right door. And maybe guardianship is the right door, and that doesn't mean that the guardianship will always be in place. We've seen guardianships be in place, and then later the individual gets their rights back. They've matured more, they get their rights back. The key thing is this is not a DIY project. You do want to work with a qualified attorney to prepare these documents. And again, don't be afraid. Don't wait till the last minute. If you're already behind, the kid has already turned 18, it's not too late. So I want to say that it's not too late. So don't stress over that. But also don't put off having that meeting with the attorney. We have attorney lists of people that attorneys that we know are nuanced and special needs all across the state that are wonderful, that can help guide you. So we're happy to make a referral in that way. If you're listening and you're from out of state, what I recommend is that you look up the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. That's the National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. You can put your zip code in and it will identify the attorneys in your area that are nuanced and special needs. National Association of Elder Law Attorneys. The other place that you can look is the the Special Needs Planning Academy. Is the Special Needs Planning Academy. That is another place where you can find attorneys that are nuanced in this. So transition and residential programs. This is a long list of programs across the state of Texas. All states have them. You may contact your ARC to find additional programs in your particular state. So we have transition and residential programs. We have partial residential programs, full residential programs, transition programs. A lot of our kids need transition program before they go to higher education. Maybe they're in that transition program for 3 to 5 years. Maybe it's longer. Again, it's not a race, but just know that there are some really awesome programs that promote community. They have, autonomy from you, and they're learning and growing. And the families that we have had kids in these programs are real happy. So I just wanted to mention that. So I also mentioned that we have upcoming webinars. Consolidated Planning Group does webinars all of the time. And so you'll get a link to our upcoming webinars and you can register for the ones that might be relevant to you. And again, we do have that higher education panel coming up later this month, or it might even be later this week. I'm sorry, I'm terrible on that, but check out that link on that. So we've talked about a lot of things. These are some things to keep on your radar. How to develop a comprehensive special needs care plan. We can help you with that. Future care cost estimates. How much money do I need to fund the special needs trust? Understanding and learning about Medicaid waivers. All states have Medicaid waivers, and some of them have waiting lists. Some of them don't have any waiting list at all. Now, Texas, we have a 17-year waiting list. I think we jockey back and forth between Texas and Florida for the longest waiting list for Medicaid waivers, but some states don't even have any waiting list at all. Medicaid waivers are designed to waive off some of the costs of care for caring for an individual with a disability that will keep them in home and community-based services. They may pay for various therapies. They may pay for housing. They may pay for modifications, home modifications. There's a lot of things that they can pay for. So SSI, SSDI, be sure to check out the webinars on that. We have webinars on every single one of these topics. ABLE accounts, beneficiary designations. I didn't mention it in this one. I mentioned in almost every webinar we have how important it is not to name your disabled individual directly as a beneficiary in anything you have. You should name the special needs trust for the benefit of said child. And the reason is we don't want them to be the beneficiary of anything, because if they receive more than $2,000, they're going to lose their eligibility for SSI and Medicaid. Special needs trust, how to fund them. We suggest touring residential living communities. and getting yourself on the waiting list. The waiting list can be as long as 5 years. Give yourself the opportunity to say no, as opposed to needing to say yes and there's nowhere to go. A lot of these places require tours first to get on their list. We talked about guardianship and the alternatives to guardianship. Again, we have entire presentations on this topic, and I know this is a topic of significant stress. But do check those out. We partner with attorneys for those topics as well. And then our post-high school options. Guys, we work on a collaborative team here at CPG. So I'm Allison Skalberg, owner of CPG, but we do work collaboratively, and we do have an awesome team here. Again, nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. We stand ready to help you on your planning journey, wherever you are on your planning journey, whether you're just starting, you want to pick up where you left off, whether you have an advisor for a long time, they're just not nuanced in special needs. It doesn't matter. It's all okay. We offer a free personalized consultation, and this QR code, you can hover your camera over the QR code, and that will take you to our calendar where you can schedule your free personalized consultation with us. And that meeting is designed for us to understand a little bit more about you, for you to understand a little bit more about us and the doors that you can walk through. We'll have a questionnaire that we send to you ahead of that meeting, and that is for us to be prepared for the meeting, so we understand a little bit more about what brings you to the meeting, so we can use the 45 minutes that we have together as effectively as possible and answer as many questions as we can during that time. But it is certainly our pleasure to meet with you, talk to you further about the planning that you've done so far, and kind of help you along on your journey. So it's certainly been my pleasure. It's been my pleasure to be here with you today, Justin and Blue Sprig. Thank you, everyone, for being here and taking your time to be here with us again today. If you need a copy of these slides, everybody that was on for today is going to get it. And anybody who's listening by podcast can email us at contact@cpgcares.net, and we will be happy to provide a copy of those slides. Thanks so much, everyone. It's certainly been my pleasure, and I look forward to connecting again soon. Bye now.
Bye.